Let's dig deeper into these issues. We have Diwa, Guinigundo, Krista Danielle Yu, and Japhet Tantiangco joining us today. Good to have with us all. Thank you so much for being here on a very rainy SONA day. Let's contextualize this discussion and start with the junking of Sara Duterte's impeachment complaint at the Supreme Court. It comes just 72 hours before the State of the Nation address. What do you make of the decision and the timing? Diwa.
Well, we respect the decision of the Supreme Court about the decision to declare the impeachment, the articles of impeachment to be unconstitutional. However, they're using a new definition and applying it on the present case involving Sara Duterte's impeachment. Okay, and for me, there is also a space for a possible compromise, and this is for the Supreme Court to issue a supplemental resolution and invoking the doctrine of operative facts. This means that all the things that have been done can be considered to be valid and then apply the new definition of what initiation is all about prospectively, but not in this case. Because the House of Representatives, in coming up with the fourth resolution, involving 215 signatories among the members of the House, precisely adhered to the old definition of what initiation is all about, which means that there is filing of the resolution and there is referral to the Committee on Justice. And this was all done. But the Supreme Court seems to have come up with a new definition. So I think, as one jurist would say, there is a space for a possible compromise.
Space of a possible compromise also brings to the fore still the uncertainty.
Yes.
We hadn't really gotten over that. And when you look at what investors really want from us is certainty.
Yes.
As an economist, Krista, where are we on that?
I think we should be looking at the institutions in unity. Like while the Supreme Court did not absolve the Vice President, they are saying you can wait, okay? And this gives us time to listen to the President now and say, hey, this is what our plan is, and Congress should focus on this first, and maybe after that, they can work on the impeachment once it's already viable in February.
Well, that takes us to the markets now. So markets trade, peso trading, and the PSEI in just about maybe 15 minutes. Yep. I'm wondering how investors might react, or maybe even not react to it, because there's a whole lot of others to react to or act on, especially with the Fed deciding this week. How do you think they would?
Yep, I do agree with you, Ma'am Cathy. So for now, from a market standpoint, I believe investors won't be reacting much to that. With respect to what happened to the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte, I believe they'll be focusing more on the President's upcoming State of the Nation address, as well as other developments this week, including the Federal Reserve's policy decision and its policy outlook. However, investors will still be watching out for this impeachment, for the developments of this impeachment trial. If it prolongs, if it deepens further the political divide within the government, and if it takes more of the government's time, which could have been used for other, for other matters like developing policies, then that could be the time that it begins to have a negative effect on investor sentiment.
Well, what exactly would you like to hear later on at 4:30?
Well, with respect to the President's SONA, of course, in general, what investors would want to hear are policies that would keep inflation low and at the same time reaccelerate economic growth. I believe the U.S.-Philippines trade relations will also come into play, given that the 19% tariffs is still deemed too high. Given the recent developments that we had in the Philippines, the weather conditions, I believe investors would also want to hear about infrastructure developments, especially flood control systems and other weather risk mitigating measures, because these storms, somehow they still have a negative effect on economic growth. There are also some industry-specific developments or policies that investors would like to hear. Like, for example, the hottest would be on online gaming. What are the regulations that the government plans? Konektadong Pinoy Bill for the digital infrastructure. And of course, we also need to hear about, agriculture, in particular food security, and how to strengthen the manufacturing sector in light of the global trade frictions that we are experiencing right now.
That's a whole laundry list
Yes.
there. What about you, Krista? What would you like to hear?
I'd like to hear more about the industries that we're going to be developing in the country. I'd want to hear more about mining, electric vehicles, the semiconductor industry, more on the services sector of that aspect of that industry. And I'd also want to look into education and the social programs that the government has. So these all go towards helping us grow as an economy.
Diwa, it's going to be a big elephant in the room if he doesn't make a mention of the impeachment case, but what would you want to hear?
All of the above, but I'd like a focus, no? A focus on how to bring out the Philippines out of the low middle income trap. So you see, since 1987, we have been in that category. So 38 years had passed, and we're still in it. Malaysia, Indonesia, and even Vietnam have already overtaken us. I would like the President to provide us with a very clear blueprint on how to bring this about. We have been waiting for the last 38 years, and we have yet to see concrete action on how to do that.
I'll challenge you
Second is,
further.
of course,
Yeah.
innovation. Okay? Innovation in all economic sectors, agriculture, services, and even industries. Without innovation, it is very important. It is impossible to effect, preventing any productivity drugs and allowing us to reap greater productivity in all the three sectors. Krista was talking about human capital. I think that is very, very important. Human capital is very important in all the three economic sectors, especially in view of the recent finding of PISA, that Filipino senior high school students ranked lowest in science, math, and reading. Question is, what kind of leaders and business managers are we going to have 10 to 20 years from now? So I think the President should focus on human capital development. We have a literacy poverty of 90%, and that's a tall order.
As we do self-rated poverty, hunger, these are
55%.
metrics. Exactly. So what will a higher middle income economy mean for those who are in the poor category?
It means more of them will graduate into the middle income category. That means they have more jobs, they have more sources of income, they will be able to take advantage of opportunities for education and public health. And that means there is less social drug in the economy. And that's good for everyone.
I just realized I jumped 2 spaces there, higher middle income. We were just talking upper middle income. But we will discuss the complexities of trade with Krista in the next, after this short break, just a deeper discussion on the negotiated tariffs imposed on Philippine goods. So keep it here on One News. Welcome back to our special coverage of the President's State of the Nation address. I'm Kathy Yang. As August 1st is the effectivity of the U.S. tariffs, can the Philippines negotiate a much lower rate? Trump's recent deal suggests that the baseline tariff rate is 15%. That is what the European Union got this Sunday in what appears to be the most consequential agreement Trump has so far announced. The new rate is far lower than the previously one that he threatened, 30%, though it is a disappointment for some observers as the bloc targeted a 0-for-0 tariff deal. Japan also got a 15% duty, while both Indonesia and the Philippines walked away with 19%. But the spotlight now turns to China, which is facing an August 12th deadline to reach a tariff agreement with the U.S. Negotiators will meet Monday in Stockholm to extend a truce, keeping higher levies at bay. Without an extension, global supply chains could see tariff rates reaching over 100%. Teneo Managing Director Bob Herrera Lim told this program China is still the big whale in the house.
The context always in the Philippines is how will the tariffs affect the manufacturing situation in the Philippines? And that's not an easy thing to do because what we still don't have is the tariff on China, right? If the tariffs on China come in measurably lower than what was given us, then the incentive for a manufacturer to move out of China declines. Now, if China goes 25, 30, 40%, then that dynamic changes. So actually, the big whale that everyone is waiting for is still China.
And still with us, Krista Danielle Yu, economist and professor at the Salle University. Japhet Tantiangco, research manager at Philstocks Financial Inc. And Diwa Guinigundo, former deputy governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Let's take it from Krista's point of view. Our trade negotiators are still hoping for 15%. It seems to be the received agreed baseline right now with all the to and fro. How much of leverage do we have given the complexity or the lack thereof of our economy?
I think our economy stands to improve a lot on complexity. Right now, we're 36th in the world in terms of trade complexity. And however, this is only because 64% of our exports is on semiconductors and electronics. So this is quite a different picture because it is a bit lopsided towards one big chunk of industry. So, yeah.
Before we take a deeper dive into the complexity, let's iron out the intangibles, if you will, maybe food security.
Yes.
Because that might not be captured in the economic complexity index that you've prepared for us. How does that affect our ability then to thrive if we do consider the contribution to the economy of our other complexities?
Okay, so what I prepared was actually a multidimensional economic complexity. So the rank 36 in the world is something that focuses on trade alone. So in the Philippines, I developed a multidimensional economic complexity index that accounts for several factors as shown on the screen. So we have here contribution to the economy, the multiplier effect, and food security, employment, product complexity, environmental impact, and gender equality, which are all concerns of the country. So by including food security into the mix, this allows us to include agricultural products. Usually, if you want to prioritize complexity in the country, agricultural products will definitely be out of the picture. Mm-hmm. But if you include food security, you start to include pork products and the hog industry. So these
and
are...
Pinoys love their lechon and
Yes.
adobo, so we need it. Let's take a look at this graph now. When we compare ourselves with the ASEAN, it's a very stark picture. A lot of times we're said to be left behind or a cellar dweller. Let's take a look at that chart because it is so striking just to see the Philippines coasting along.
Yes.
Take a look at that dark green line there.
Yes.
And it's even saddening to see that the lighter green line is Vietnam. It just kind of zoomed up. And I was looking at when that happened. It was the global financial crisis of 2007-08. I mean, tell us what happened there. What did we not do that Vietnam did? Because it was both for the exports and imports.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I think what Vietnam did was, at that point, Intel moved to Vietnam around the global financial crisis. So that's one of the things. Another thing would be their textile industry. They started opening up and they really invested on research and development. So that's something that we did not do. Vietnam right now invests around 1% of their GDP in terms of research and development. But in the Philippines, we only invest less than 0.5%. And that's very, very small. So we should have space for research and development.
We should have had that before. I mean, you know, what did Winston Churchill say? Never waste a good crisis.
Yes.
The global financial crisis was a real pivot point. When we take a deeper look into the components of exports and imports, if you could just pull that up, we do see the integrated circuits as our number one import and export. A little less so when it comes to export. So what happens is, and my understanding is, it's intermediate goods.
Yes.
We kind of like piece the gadget that comes to us, and then we export. whatever little widgets we put in to make it a little more value added.
Yeah.
But that's not enough, right?
Yes,
Because it doesn't bring us up in the value chain that provides jobs and more opportunities.
We're actually at the tail end where we have assembly, testing, and packaging, ATP, here in the Philippines. So those are the low value activities in the value chain. What we have to do is to move up the value chain in semiconductors. And we can do that by focusing on IC design. So that's something that does not require, it requires a lot of capital still, but it's not as much as foundries, which requires billions of pesos.
Right, and just to make sure that we get it right, this is the import profile of the Philippines, and I see cars as the
Yes.
other huge spot there.
Yeah.
Probably the reason why America's importing cars to us tariff-free. Is that right? I mean, are they building on that then?
Probably, but actually, most of our imports of cars come from China. So, what the government is saying is they had to humor Trump. That's why they allowed the zero tariff and just let it slide that we got a 1% percentage point decrease in the initial 20% tariff rate. So, at the end of the day, we're not really importing that much cars from the United States.
Exactly, but it's really clear that we need to explore developing a local production network
Yes.
to get into the high complexity products and provide jobs, opportunities. Diwa, how do you think the president should communicate that where we stand? Because it looks really dire when we look at the charts.
Well, let me recall a book by Raghuram Rajan, Breaking the Mold. He used to be the economic counselor of the IMF. And he was talking about how to break out of the mold, and in our case, how to escape the low middle income trap. Okay? He was talking there about innovation, servicification of agriculture, services, and industry. Now, one of the ways by which he was saying we can escape the trap is precisely to move up to the higher value chain. So if we can develop and provide services, we produce a lot of physicists and electrical engineers here who can do a lot of financial technology, who can do a lot of those data science and big data. If we can apply all of these AI things to agriculture, even the use of weather forecasts, etc., industry and services, we can then move up without having to develop our own heavy industries in the Philippines. So we would like to see precisely what I was saying earlier, the president talking about innovation. We have a National Innovation Council in the Philippines, but it's gathering dust at the NEDA, which is now the DepDeb. Okay, I hope that National Innovation Council can be not really revived, but it can be strengthened, and activities actually intensified, so that more and more innovative things can be done in all of those economic sectors, and allow us to move up to the higher value chain in the global economy. Yeah.
Right. As we speak, it's 3 minutes as the 9:33 now, 3 minutes as the Philippine Stock Exchange is already trading. I'm not yet sure how it's doing, but how do you think the markets are going to trade for today?
Well, if you're going to look at historical data for the past 10 years, on the day of the SONA, usually the local market declines, and this could be because of investors' cautiousness. So investors are going to exit the market for the time being, while they're waiting for what the president has to say.
All right, well, let's take a look at the PSCI then. It is down. Oh my gosh, you got that right. Because you spoke, it's down now 0.1%. But after the break, I know that you prepared something for us, a bit of a historical backdrop on the movements of the PSCI and the peso. So still with us in our hour-long SONA special, Japhet Tantiangco, Research Manager at Philstocks Financial, Diwa Guinigundo, former Deputy Governor of the Bangko Sentral, and Krista Danielle Yu, Economist and Professor at Salle University. Let's pick up on that, Japhet, on the POGOs and the ban. That had like multi-sectoral effect, if you will, that we're still feeling right now in the real estate sector, food, logistics. How have the markets been like, and the industries that it has affected, because jobs were lost as well as created new ones?
Well, with respect to the POGO ban, I believe it has been accepted positively by the general market because of the positive effects, the security issues that it was able to address. At the same time, because of that, it added to us exiting the FATF's gray list. So it has been received positively by the general market. However, it has, it has negatively affect particularly the property sector. I mean, if you're going to look at the property index right now, it has declined because of the impact of the POGO ban. Because of the POGO ban, because of the POGO ban, there was a lot of freed up office spaces. And at the same time, of course, the POGO workers, they were also, some of them were staying in residentials, which are also offered by the property sector. And so when the POGO ban happened, so it hit the office spaces, it hit the residentials, and so for those who are exposed to them, so the likes of Mega World, the likes of Ayala Land, so they were heavily hit, and you will still see that today.
And it's already a year, so
Yes.
we see that the transformation is still in process. Krista, in what way is this weighing on our economic growth then? This sort of pivoting away from something that's been banned and finding other businesses that have opportunities.
So it's actually, like what Japhet said earlier, it's good that we are able to increase security. So the lower crime, the more secure environment would actually encourage economic growth. However, this also opened avenues towards e-gaming here in the Philippines. So that currently is our major concern, and I believe that we should be regulating rather than banning this. If we ban something, people would just want to do it, just like other substances in the market. But with regulation, we are able to initiate safeguards that would protect the citizens of the country.
Would you want to hear a ban? Any kind of ban during SONA and later on, Diwa?
Well, personally, I'm not in favor of any kind of gambling. Okay.
Yeah.
Second, I think those freed up spaces, both business and residential, should open up opportunities for more productive, more legitimate, and better promising types of opportunities. I mean, those offices can put up and host more BPOs.
Yes.
Okay, it can host more shared work environment. Now, this is the new thing in Singapore and in Hong Kong, and that's available space for this type of business opportunities. So I think the focus should be more on those business opportunities that will really provide better employment opportunities, more productive opportunities for our people.
Let's go back to the markets, Japhet, because we opened lower by about 0.1%. I think it still is. It's holding at a lower point there, along with the Philippine peso, if we take a look at it. I know that you prepared a 10-year view.
Yep.
Just very quickly, could you take us through it before, during, and after? How do the markets perform when SONA happens?
Okay, so the chart that I've prepared is a week-on-week chart. And this is for the past 10 years. And if you're going to look at the charts in general, or if you're going to look at the average in general, the PSCI and the peso, they move quite the same. So for the PSCI and the peso, the week before the SONA, so for the PSCI, it declines, and for the local currency, it depreciates. But at the same time, if you're going to look at the week after the SONA, the PSCI increases, and at the same time, the peso appreciates.
That's what we're seeing there in that candlestick chart. Take us through that. It's a little bit complicated with the colors, but yeah, I get your point then.
Yeah, let's go first with the PSCI. So first you have the for the PSCI, as mentioned, in general, it declines. The week before the SONA, it declines, but the week after the SONA, it increases. And this reflects investors' cautiousness. I mean, they would want to hear what the president has to say first, and so they're going to exit the market. But as far as we can see with the charts, for the most part, they have been satisfied with what the president has said, and that has caused them to get back into the market after the SONA. In fact, if you're going to look at closely for the PSEI, the declines for the past 10 years, they only started in 2019. And then they went into the pandemic years. Of course, in 2019, perhaps investors are also factoring in other things. Like, of course, back then, you still had the U.S.-China trade war. At the same time, you had the reenacted budget, which somehow dented confidence in the government, and all of those eventually leading to a slowing down of economic growth. And then finally, in 2020 onwards, of course, you had the pandemic, which also caused the market to decline before the SONA.
Yeah, look at that huge drop there. I mean, we were looking at that, and yeah, that should be the pandemic. I don't need to read the numbers and the, the notations. What about the Philippine peso? Has it exhibited the same kind of behavior before, during, and after SONA?
The peso is quite different. The peso is quite different in terms of the movements within those years. It's been more volatile. But in general, it has also, like the market, it has depreciated before the week before the SONA, showing investors' cautiousness, including foreign investors. But after the week after the SONA, the peso appreciates again, which shows us that for the most part, investors, including foreign ones, they appreciate what the presidents say. And that's what causes them to get back into the market.
Yeah, when you look at the dollar-peso exchange rate right now, at this moment, it's weaker.
Yep.
At 57.13 to the dollar, coming from 57.11. We got about 7 minutes to go. I wanted a bit of fast talk amongst us. You can say a few words, maybe, or a few phrases when I say a certain phrase that has really resonated with us over the past year. I'll start with ease of doing business. What comes to mind?
Many more miles to go.
Okay, so if I exactly the point, because when I speak with foreign chambers, I mean, this is really their complaint. I mean, we got to do a lot better in making it easier to do business. I mean, we're friendly folks, but then it's more difficult.
And it shows in the ease of doing business index. It barely moved over the years.
Right. Let me get one in. Konektadong Pinoy. Japhet, you made a mention of that. Yes, Krista.
So I think Konektadong Pinoy should be cautiously approved because it's an oligopoly for a reason. It's a highly capital intensive market, and you don't want people to, well, of course the owners of the infrastructure would want them to use them exclusively. If there's infrastructure sharing and people who do not have enough capital get into the market, how would they be able to service the barrios that they claim that they'd want to service? So I think that's what they should be looking at, Konektadong Pinoy. And they are acknowledged that in the far-flung areas, they should be they have Starlink. They use Starlink. So I think with the Free Wi-Fi Act, government can actually tap into resources and fund this for the people.
I guess that leaves us to Japhet. I'm going to pick out hunger.
Hunger. Well, the food. The first thing that comes to mind is food security. I mean, to address hunger, we really need to strengthen our agricultural sector in order to boost food security within the country. Unfortunately, the problem with our agricultural sector right now is we are still heavily dependent on imports. And with the global trade frictions that we are seeing right now, the rising global trade frictions, I believe, it further drives down the need that we should really be establishing that food security, food abundance in the country in order for us to solve the issue of hunger.
All right, so much work to do for our president. Has got 3 more years of a legacy to create. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a lovely and very insightful panel. Diwa, Krista, and Japhet.
You're
Much
very much welcome.
appreciated.